Hello there, back again. Bernie Miklasz with you. Better late than never. I promised some one of you who left a comments thing in the comment section. Sorry, yeah, comment section would be left in the comment section, right? About asking if I was going to do college football picks, and I said, hey, if that's a request, the answer is yes. Well, that's the good news. The bad news is that I'm getting this up later than I had wanted to. As I'm recording this, it's 5:30 Central Time. The Indiana at Notre Dame game is about to get underway by 7 o'clock. So I do apologize for that, but at least here, look at it this way. If you're coming to this video late, you will have plenty of opportunity to make fun of me when there's 4 games, when let's say I get 3 of them wrong. Okay. So look at it that way. There's a bright side. There's no expiration date in making fun of me when I get picks wrong. This season, I've actually done pretty well. I just haven't made picks public. I would like to, starting next college football season, get to the point where I do this once a week, like every Friday, pick out several games that I really have a strong feeling about. This isn't really one of those occasions because I'm a little wishy-washy on all 4 of these games in one way or the other played this weekend, the first round of the first 12-team college football playoff tournament. And, of course, some of the big boys have byes this week, but we'll talk about the games on the card this weekend, and we'll see how we do. And I know there's a lot of good opinions out there. I've been doing my research and stuff, so I'll try to get through these as quickly as I can, and happy to do that for you all for entertainment purposes. All right, and all these odds are accurate as of about half an hour ago at the latest. I made sure to check them before I started getting ready to do this. So Indiana plus 6.5 at Notre Dame. That's been fluctuating a little bit. It's been 7.5, 7. Now it's down to 6.5. So we'll see about this one. I think it's a very entertaining matchup. I can't wait to watch it, and I will be watching it soon. Curtis Rourke leads the Hoosiers offense that's 4th in the nation in a fancy pants stat, drop back, extra points added per play. And the senior's coming off a regular season, which he threw for a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns and only a few interceptions. But this gets us into Indiana's schedule, and I hate to just beat on that because, by the way, Notre Dame didn't play a great schedule either. But anyway, when Rourke played at Ohio State this year, Indiana lost decisively. They weren't embarrassed or anything, but they lost decisively. Rourke was only 8 for 18, 68 yards. And that was really the only time this year where the Hoosiers faced elite competition. And Rourke, who I like a lot, he didn't really pass the test that day. And I know it's one game, but still is by far the toughest team they played in 2024 to this point. And despite a bad day defensively late in the season against USC, the Fighting Irish had the top pass defense in the nation this season based on EPA per play. That's a metric. A lot of people use it. Just when I use it, I just assume that it's me saying this is a hell of a defense, because it is. No defense is perfect, as USC showed when they gave Notre Dame a run for the money a couple weeks ago. I don't have a lot of confidence in the Hoosier running game getting going against a Notre Dame defensive front that's really outstanding. But Indiana also has a really tough run defense, and we could see these teams basically battle to a draw on the ground. Both teams bring a rugged defense into the pit here Friday night. And if that's the scenario, the way I see it, one of the quarterbacks is going to have to step up and make plays to win the game. It won't be a passing show, which should be kind of tough conditions for that this evening if the weather forecasts are accurate. But we're not talking necessarily about Riley Leonard, the Notre Dame quarterback, having to make 20 great plays. I think it's going to be really, really tight because of the defensive excellence of both of these teams. I just think that Notre Dame's Riley Leonard has more capability. He has more versatility. He has more ways to make a play on you than does Curtis Rourke, the Indiana quarterback. if you haven't watched Notre Dame a lot, and I'm sure a lot of you have, but if you haven't, Riley Leonard is a big dual threat quarterback. He can make all kinds of different plays all over the yard. He's tough to bring down when he runs. And Indiana really hasn't faced this style of quarterback who's really, really good at this style of play. They haven't faced that all season. And so he's going to be tough for Indiana. They can do a good job against them. Again, I'm not saying he's going to tear them up. I'm just saying he can make some plays when you really need a play to win this game. Since throwing 2 interceptions and that horrendous loss to Northern Illinois early in the year, Leonard has completed 67.5% of his passes, nearly 1,800 yards, 16 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and he's rushed for 642 yards, averaging over 6 yards a carry and 13 touchdowns. That's what we mean by dual threat. Notre Dame has won 10 consecutive games by an average margin of 30.7 points. And while both teams have faced similar schedules in terms of difficulty this year, Notre Dame is at home, and Riley Leonard has more probability of making the kind of plays that can pull out a win for the home team. Notre Dame has allowed 13.6 points per game this season. If they can keep Indiana to 16 points or less tonight, it'll be up to the quarterback to take care of the rest. Notre Dame's won 10 games this year by double digits, and they've scored at least 28 points 10 times. Indiana has only faced 4 bowl teams and 1 ranked team, Ohio State, while the Fighting Irish are 7-1 against bowl-bound teams this year and 4-0 against ranked teams. So despite the fact that their schedules are similar, right, Notre Dame has gotten more done than Indiana has against better teams. So I do think there's a little bit of a difference in, to use a term, the kind of horses that they each raced against, right? And I mentioned Notre Dame's 10-game winning streak, and let me add this, please. The Fighting Irish have covered the spread in its last 8 games, outscoring opponents in those games by an average of 43.4 to 15.5 points. I mean, so they're not only covering the spread, they're covering it easily lately. Indiana's passing game, this is what troubles me, because I'd love to see the Hoosiers give it a whirl and get it done. I would. No disrespect to Notre Dame fans. It would just be, my boy Tom Ackerman, I want to root for my colleague at KMOX, an Indiana graduate. But, I think you need some upsets to get this thing going. And there's a lot of people doubting on Indiana. Upsets got to be part of the formula in the college football playoff. Man, it's got to be crazy. It can't be predictable. So that's kind of where I am, kind of rooting for an upset, except I do think Notre Dame's going to win the game. But if we're talking about investments, let me finish this final thought. And by the way, Indiana's coaching staff is excellent. Cignetti is just the real deal. He's excellent. They might have an advantage tonight. That's how I would, if you asked me where I had to pick a head coach for this game, I would pick him. But I think, listen, I think Notre Dame's coach is excellent. Don't get me wrong. I'm pretty well coached, both of those teams. But I think it's been one of those special years for Indiana. All right. So one final thought on this about I think the low scoring probability of this game. Both of these teams are at the lower end of the spectrum in terms of pace of play. Indiana ranks 81st and Notre Dame 115th out of 134 teams. Basically, pretty methodical approaches. Clock's going to be running a lot. They both like to run the ball, even though they're going up against really good run defenses in this one. And both of these teams also rank in the top 6 nationally in fewest points per game allowed. I mean, that's a great defensive matchup, schedule or not. A lot of sharp money is coming in on the under, which means that both teams would combine to score fewer than 50 points if you take the under, which I think is probably a smart play. I think this is going to be a good one, and I do like Notre Dame to win, and I do like Notre Dame to win, but I do like Indiana to cover, and that's fair to do. That is not a cop-out. I don't do things to go to have my foot in two different spaces. If I were to wager, I would wager on Indiana covering, okay? Because I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. But I think Notre Dame, because of the home field advantage, will find a way to get a close dub. That's all I'm trying to say. And it's hardly, me being wimpy about it. If you want me to do a thing where I just pick up straight up winners, that's the easiest thing to do. When you start picking against the spread, it's more difficult. All right, second game. This will start Saturday, 11 a.m. kickoff. You got SMU +9, and that's going up from 8.5. SMU +9 at Penn State. Over under is 53. After Penn State scored 37 points in the Big Ten championship against Oregon, the number one team in the country. It looks like the Nittany Lions have raised their performance level at just the right time. And this one, I kind of waffle on this one a little bit. A lot of people have it. I don't mind admitting it. So me, Mr. Research, numbers all over the place. Read, find info. You turn some things over and you look at some more information and you're like, boy, I don't know. Because I thought this, but now I'm finding out this. I think that's a human reaction when you're investigating for information to help you make up your mind. Listen, I think, Penn State's physicality is a real advantage in this one. I think SMU is at a slight disadvantage on both sides of the ball when we're talking about fighting in the pit. And the Mustangs' turnover numbers, and that's a big thing. The Mustangs' turnover numbers away from their home field in Dallas are concerning. The only real test SMU has faced this season came against BYU and Clemson, and both were losses. And neither of those teams are as good as the squads that Penn State lost to, number 6 Ohio State and number 1 Oregon, right? Just compare who each of these squads has lost to. I mean, it's really no comparison. I've seen plenty of opinions saying SMU won't be able to muscle up against Penn State. As I mentioned, they're physical. I get that. And I've seen questions about SMU's schedule in terms of, Penn State's Big Ten school, blah, blah, blah. It all depends on what strength of schedule that you look at. And I looked at one a little while ago, the Sagarin ratings, and there's not a real huge difference in the strength of schedule according to Sagarin. Penn State played the number 44 schedule, and SMU played the number 61 schedule. But technically, Penn State did play a tougher schedule. So it depends on where you shop for your strength of schedule ratings. Anyway, let me get this going now. That said, in ACC play, regular season this year, the Mustangs never faced Miami, Clemson, Syracuse, or Georgia Tech during the regular season. And those during league play during the regular season, Miami, Clemson, Syracuse, Georgia Tech were combined 23-9. They were all really good teams in one way or the other within the context of the ACC. And though I give credit to the Mustangs for rallying from a 17-point deficit pretty late to tie Clemson in the ACC championship game, the bottom line is Clemson still won the game, right? I also have a reason to pause, though, as I just say, I'm going to look at both sides and come to a conclusion. I have a reason to pause when thinking this is going to be some easy test for Penn State. In their 3 toughest games of the season, USC, Ohio State, and Oregon, the Nittany Lions were 0-3 against the spread. SMU's getting 9 points. This is one of the best scoring offenses in the nation, talking about the Mustangs. This makes the Mustangs a live underdog. It really does. It gives me, a lot to think about. But this is actually in favor of like a really close outcome. It feels like it could play out kind of like the ACC title game. Penn State's home field advantage, favorable cold weather, blustery conditions at Penn State, lot different than Dallas weather this time of year. I could see a scenario where SMU, is going to they'll be unsettled early, then they'll adjust, and they've shown an ability to just shake things off and get after it after maybe starting slow. And once SMU settles in, and it really is a fearless team and it's a rambunctious team, we could be in for another one of those frantic rallies that gets SMU close. So I go back and forth, as I've said, because of the point spread. On one hand, and this is interesting, on one hand, Nittany Lions have lost their last 6 games against the spread versus ranked teams, okay? This is simply against the spread we're talking about. They've lost 6 in a row against the spread, against ranked teams. But Penn State, when Penn State is a favorite between 7 and 24 points, a favorite by anywhere from 7 to 24 points, which qualifies in this one. They're 18-1-1 against the spread under head coach James Franklin. So again, you see why I say I have a tough time making up my mind, but that number 18-1-1 in games where Penn State's favored by this much, at least this much. That's pretty compelling to me anyway. And I think Penn State's going to get this one done. I think maybe Drew Allar could be the second best quarterback in this tournament behind the Oregon quarterback. The 9-point gap is too much. It seems too much to give to a team that lost 2 games this year by a combined 6 points. I'm talking about SMU's losses. But I do think Penn State's a step up, and I do think being at home, I think it's a unique setting for a team like SMU, and I think the Nittany Lions, pardon the cliche, will roar on Saturday, winning 27-17. I'm going to be a little quicker in the final 2. I think I'm going in chronological order. Okay, Clemson is the second game Saturday. They're getting 12 points at Texas. Over under is 50.5. A lot of action coming in on Dabo Swinney's fellas in this one. But I don't see Clemson's offense, frankly, especially in Austin, Texas, coming up with a lot of successful plays to kind of pull this one off. I guess it's a matter of whether they cover or not. But can they really come up with enough successful plays to crack a Texas defense that, in terms of scoring defense, right up there in the top 3 in the nation? They're as good as anybody in college football. Yeah, they lost 2 games this year. They lost them to Georgia, and Georgia got the best coach in America, and Georgia, just generally speaking, is so battle-tested. I don't think Texas has to be ashamed of losing 2 to Georgia. It would have been good if they split. So, yeah, maybe they have to be a little bit ashamed, but you know what I'm saying. I'll be honest here. I don't trust Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers. He's been playing hurt, an oblique, ankle, all kinds of stuff. If the Longhorns get by Clemson in this game, and I do think they will, I'll be honest. I could change my mind based on how Ewers plays in this one, right? But before I see that, I would really question if the Longhorns will last long in the tournament with an ineffective Ewers. I think he, at times, is a liability, right? That said, Ewers has had 2 weeks to heal up, get fresher and healthier in time for this Clemson game. And with multiple weeks to prepare for a game this season, the Longhorns came out. First time, 52 points. Second time, 34 points. Third time, 49 points. Meanwhile, that brutal, as in tough, Longhorn defense gave up more than 17 points only 3 times, including twice to Georgia. Double-digit favorites historically in the college football playoff, and I know this is a different format. I get it. But double-digit favorites are 8-0 in college football playoff history, with only one having won by fewer than 17 points. That's kind of interesting. Know this about Clemson, and this is tells me this is the one that tipped it for me about whether Texas can win and cover. Clemson averaged 45 points a game this season in 7 games against FBS teams that were no better than 500. So they averaged 45 points against FBS teams that were 500 or worse, right? How about when they played FBS teams that had a winning record? Well, they had 5 of those games, and they averaged only 19.2 points per game. That is a huge difference. How that offense functions based on the quality of the opponent, right? And if they only average 19.2 points in 5 games against FBS teams with a winning record, which includes Georgia, for example, I mean, they're running into a truly super defense down in Texas Saturday. This season, in the 2 games Dabo Swinney's team faced against SEC teams, they average only 8.5 points. That would have been Georgia, then it would have been South Carolina. And I'm talking about points on offense. I see this at about like 30-13, maybe 30-14. Texas wins at home. Finally, this one's intriguing to me because everybody's kind of jumping on the Tennessee bandwagon. Tennessee getting 7.5 as an underdog at Ohio State. I understand why. There's a recency bias here. Why so many people are throwing their money down on Tennessee. Ohio State's ugly loss, just a brutal loss to Michigan at home. Left bruises and bad memories, and left a feeling out there amongst the national football fans, college football fans, that Ohio State is ripe. They're ready to go. All you got to do is flick them, and they're going to get knocked out of the tournament by the Volunteers. I get the thinking there, but I'm not so sure about it. And Tennessee's good, man. Don't get me wrong, but they're going to have to win at Ohio State, right? That's not easy to do, despite the fact that Michigan did it. It's just not easy to do. Tennessee's toughest road games this year were at Georgia, at Arkansas, and at Oklahoma. Two of those teams finished 6-6. That would be Arkansas and Oklahoma. And in the three games, Tennessee went 1-2, and the average is 18.5 points per game. Now they are facing Ohio State's top-ranked defense inside the horseshoe. And why does this matter? Well, it's because Ohio State lost to Michigan because of their offense, and in particular quarterback Will Howard, and a terrible, terrible game plan by Chip Kelly. Like, yeah, I know Michigan was able to run the ball late to set up the winning field goal and all that stuff. I get it. But Ohio State's defense wasn't the reason they lost that game. If you look at Tennessee's, redshirt freshman quarterback, and I always mispronounce his name, man, so I apologize. Nico Iamaleava, he takes a lot of sacks, and he's not sharp yet, I think, because of inexperience. I think he's going to be a hell of a quarterback next year in particular. He hasn't been real sharp on his vertical throws, and Ohio State's got an excellent secondary. Michigan couldn't pass on him at all. And if you look at his those three toughest road opponents that they had, he only averaged 170 passing yards a game, although he did take good care of the ball as far as in the air. I think there might have been, I don't know if there's one interception, but just didn't get a lot done through the air is my point. Listen, Ohio State's offense, as I said, is primarily responsible for that embarrassing defeat of Michigan. Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator, I think he's really good, but he just had a day to forget. It was just awful. They're kept running between the tackles all day long, and it's just like, Chip, my friend, you got really good guys out on the perimeter. You got those Ohio State receivers. They always got great ones, right? They got playmakers. They got tight ends who are good and disruptive. Get the ball to these people. Why are you trying to play Woody Hayes football against a defense that's stopping your run? They're plugging it up. You're not getting anywhere, but he kept doing it. So I find it hard to believe that Chip Kelly would be that flawed in his thinking again, especially because Tennessee has got one hell of a defensive front. They're in their front seven. They've got 2 or 3, some people even say 4 future NFL players. You can't run against them. You can try, but you can't run against them. So is Chip Kelly really going to try to do this again, just like Michigan? No, I think Ohio State's going to have to get the ball in the air. They're going to have to go over top that front seven. And I'd like to say that I trusted Will Howard, but I don't. Okay. They have 2 losses, and he was in the middle of screwing up both of them, right? But Ohio State in that banged up offensive line can't try to force the run against that defense. So look for Ohio State and Chip Kelly to dial some stuff up, some more creativity, go over the top, try to get big plays by throwing the rock to those dangerous receivers. And Ohio State has got an abundance of weapons that Chip Kelly failed to activate against Michigan. I think he's going to activate him in this game. I agree with something said by one of the handicappers at VSiN, which I go to for some information. I'm going to quote directly. If you look at Ohio State's schedule this season, the team that Tennessee compares most to in terms of strength, speed, and athleticism would be Oregon. The Buckeyes struggle with that speed on both sides of the ball. I've noticed that quarterback Will Howard impacted most when he plays a very fast and athletic defense. He becomes very conservative, unlike past great Buckeye quarterbacks. All right, end of quote. I agree. I think that's really interesting, and I it's good stuff, right? And as I mentioned, the overrated, Howard concerns me. He really does. And you got that great defensive front, but I really do think Ohio State toughs this one out. I think they're going to get more balls out on the perimeter. I think they're going to go over the top. I think they can make some big plays that way. If Will Howard implodes again, they're going to go home, talking about Ohio State. But here's a vote in confidence. Ohio State, I think it will be a tight game. And so if you ask me to pick the winner, I would pick Ohio State. If you're asking me where I'd put my money to cover the spread, I'd go maybe 24-21, 24-20. So I think Tennessee will cover the spread. Again, you can pick winners straight up. Don't even worry about the line and all that. Or you can just say here's who I think is going to win. I'm confident this team will win. But all these games set up in a way to where if you have to do it against the spread, you can find abundant reason to think that really all four of these teams are capable of covering, although I only have two of them covering, which would be Indiana and which would be Tennessee. Enjoy the games and feel free to stop by and make fun of me for getting some of these, I hope not all of these, wrong. Have a wonderful weekend.